A desert sun beats down on a city of blinding white stone. This is Amarna, a capital built for a single god and a pharaoh who shattered tradition. Whispers of a scandal that could unravel a dynasty have echoed for over 3,000 years. The central mystery is an alleged forbidden love between Pharaoh Akhenaten and his own sister. We are going to separate historical fact from sensational fiction, digging into the evidence to see what really happened. By the end, you will understand the shocking political and divine calculations behind one of history's most debated royal relationships. Was this a profound romance or a cold grab for absolute power? How do we even begin to trace a love story etched in stone and buried by sand? What does it feel like to question everything you thought you knew about ancient rules and human hearts? To understand the scandal, we must first meet the family at the heart of this ancient drama. The stage is set during Egypt's glittering 18th dynasty, a time of immense power and rigid tradition. The pharaoh is Amenhotep IV, a young king who would soon shock the world by changing his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for the Aten. His revolution was not just political, it was spiritual. He rejected the vast pantheon of Egyptian gods, led by the mighty Amun, and declared that only one deity held true power, the sun disk known as the Aten. This was a radical, earth-shattering move that upended 1,000 years of belief. To cement this break from the past, he abandoned the old capital of Thebes and built a brand new city from scratch in the desert, calling it Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten. Today, we know its haunting ruins as Amarna. Within this new city of sun and stone, his family was his central icon. By his side was his great royal wife, Nefertiti, whose famous bust reveals a woman of stunning and powerful beauty. She was not just a queen, she was a co-ruler, depicted in art smiting enemies and driving chariots alongside Akhenaten, a level of visibility never before granted to an Egyptian queen. Together, they had 6 daughters, but the royal family tree had deeper, more tangled roots. Akhenaten was the son of the previous pharaoh, the great Amenhotep III, and his chief queen, Tiye. And it was common, almost expected, for pharaohs to marry within the royal family to keep the sacred bloodline pure. Sisters often married brothers or half-brothers to ensure the succession remained uncontested and divine. This brings us to the mysterious sister. Historical records from Amarna are fragmented, deliberately damaged after Akhenaten's death when his city was abandoned and his memory condemned. But among the shadows, a figure emerges. Some evidence points to a princess named Meritaten, who is primarily known as Akhenaten and Nefertiti's eldest daughter. However, other interpretations of carvings and titles suggest that before Nefertiti rose to prominence, Akhenaten may have been married to another royal woman, possibly a full or half-sister from his father's court. Her name is lost, her face erased, but the possibility of her existence is the spark for our mystery. In the normal course of Egyptian royalty, such a marriage, while intimate to our modern sensibilities, would have been a standard political tool. So why does this particular relationship feel forbidden, even to the ancients? The answer lies not in the act itself, but in the chaotic, revolutionary world Akhenaten built around it. The stones of Amarna are a silent chorus, their carvings weathered but still telling a fractured story. To find the truth, we must become detectives of dust and hieroglyph, starting with the words of foreign kings. The Amarna letters, a cache of clay tablets written in Akkadian cuneiform, are diplomatic mail from empires like Babylon and Assyria to the Egyptian court. In these letters, a fascinating detail emerges. The foreign rulers often address Pharaoh Akhenaten, but they also consistently send greetings and gifts to his great royal wife. For most of his reign, that title unquestionably belonged to Nefertiti. Yet, in some of the earliest correspondence, there are hints, subtle and debated, that a different royal woman held influence. Some scholars argue the phrasing suggests a queen who was a king's daughter and sister, a woman of the purest royal lineage, possibly installed before Nefertiti's historic rise. It is a whisper in diplomatic clay, not a proclamation, but it sets the stage for a deeper puzzle within Egypt's own monuments. Inside the rock-cut tombs of Amarna's nobles, the walls scream with propaganda for the new god and his holy family. Here, the art is bizarre and intimate, a dramatic break from tradition. The royal family is shown in elongated, almost surreal forms, bathed in the rays of the Aten. Akhenaten and Nefertiti are always central, their daughters clustered around them, but titles carved beside these figures are the real clues. Egyptologists meticulously study epithets like king's wife, king's daughter, and crucially, king's sister. When the title king's sister appears alongside great royal wife, it ignites the theory. It suggests a woman who was both the pharaoh's sibling and his spouse. There are fragments like a damaged stela, sometimes called the Corrigency stela, that show Akhenaten seated with a female figure whose cartouche, her royal nameplate, is brutally erased. The figure is dressed as a queen. Nefertiti's name often appears in such scenes, but the erasure is suspicious, who was so dangerous that even her stone name had to be murdered after death. The most compelling argument comes from the patterns of power. Nefertiti, for all her glory, is never explicitly called king's sister in secure inscriptions. She is the great royal wife, the lady of all women, and later evidence suggests she may have even ruled as a co-pharaoh named Ankh-Kheperir. Her power came from her role as Akhenaten's partner in revolution. Proponents of the sister-wife theory propose that earlier in his reign, perhaps even before he moved to Amarna, Akhenaten followed tradition. He may have married a full or half-sister to secure his throne upon their father's death, a purely political union to stabilize the dynasty during his radical religious overhaul. Then Nefertiti, perhaps a noblewoman from a powerful family, entered the picture. Her charisma, intelligence, and shared vision for the Aten cult propelled her to unprecedented heights, gradually overshadowing any prior royal wife. This would explain why evidence of a sister is so ghostly, scrubbed away not only by later pharaohs who hated Akhenaten, but perhaps even during his own reign as Nefertiti's star ascended. The stones, therefore, tell two stories. One is the public, glorious narrative of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, the divine couple of the sun. The other is a palimpsest, a shadow narrative scratched out but still faintly visible, of a more conventional royal beginning that his revolution sought to erase. So which woman truly held his heart, or was his heart never the point? The Shadow Queen's identity is perhaps the most frustrating puzzle in this entire mystery. We know the title King's Sister exists in the record, but attaching it to a specific woman feels like trying to catch smoke with your hands. The candidates emerge from the glittering court of Akhenaten's father, Amenhotep III. He had several daughters with his great wife Tiye, making them Akhenaten's full sisters. Princess Sitamun is a prime suspect. We know she held extraordinary status, even being called a great royal wife to her own father, a title that likely denoted immense ritual importance rather than a marital relationship in the modern sense. When Amenhotep III died, his son would have inherited everything, including his royal women. Marrying Sitamun would have been a seamless transfer of divine legitimacy. Another sister, Princess Iset, is also in the mix, as is a lesser-known princess named Nabeta. Each represents a strand of pure royal blood, a living link to the previous reign that a new pharaoh, especially one planning a religious coup, would want to directly control. But here the waters grow murkier still. The practice of marrying close relatives was not about love, it was about cosmic real estate. The pharaoh was a god on earth, a being whose essence was divine. That essence was carried in the royal blood. Marrying a sister or half-sister was seen as keeping that sacred substance undiluted, contained within the Holy Family. It was a merger of divine assets, ensuring the next king would be as godly as the last. So from a political and theological standpoint, any of these sisters would have been a logical, even expected, choice for the young Amenhotep IV as he ascended the throne. The scandal, therefore, isn't necessarily that he might have married a sister. The scandal, buried in the erased carvings, is that this marriage seems to have been deliberately hidden later, overwritten by the dazzling narrative of Nefertiti. Then there is the most controversial and unsettling theory, one that pushes the boundaries of even ancient Egyptian royal practice. Some fragments of art and text from the very end of Akhenaten's reign suggest his daughter, Meritaten, may have stepped into the role of great royal wife. This was not entirely without precedent, as daughters could hold ritual positions, but for a pharaoh to marry his own child added a profound layer of taboo. If true, this would represent a desperate move, perhaps after Nefertiti's death or disappearance, to maintain the closed, divine loop of his family cult when no other suitable royal woman of the pure bloodline remained. It paints a picture of a regime spiraling inward, obsessed with its own insular divinity to the point of shocking conventional morality, so we are left with a haunting set of possibilities. Was the mysterious sister wife a dignified princess like Sitamun, a political bride later discarded, or does the shadow stretch forward in time, pointing to the tragic figure of Meritaten, a daughter thrust into a role she never asked for? The evidence refuses to give a single, clear answer. This ambiguity is the core of the mystery. It means the forbidden love we are chasing may not be one story, but two or even three, layered over each other like ghostly images on a reused piece of stone. And this leads us to the most crucial question of all. If we cannot be sure who she was, can we ever understand what she meant to him? To answer that, we must look past titles and bloodlines into the radical and intimate world Akhenaten built for his family. But was it truly forbidden? To label Akhenaten's possible marriage to a sister as a scandal is to view it through a modern lens, one that shatters against the bedrock of ancient Egyptian belief. For the pharaoh, such a union was not taboo, it was theology in action. The most sacred myth in all of Egypt was the story of Osiris and Isis. Osiris, the murdered god-king, was brought back to life by his devoted sister wife, Isis, who then conceived their son, the falcon god Horus. Every pharaoh was the living embodiment of Horus, the son of a divine sibling pair. By marrying a sister, a pharaoh was literally reenacting the foundational drama of the cosmos. He was stitching his own family into the fabric of the gods, becoming Osiris to his Isis. This wasn't about romance, it was about manifesting divine order on earth. It consolidated the royal bloodline, that sacred essence, into a single, powerful channel. It prevented rival noble families from marrying into the throne and diluting the dynasty's claim. It also kept immense temple wealth and land holdings firmly within the immediate family's control. So in a traditional sense, a pharaoh marrying a sister was the opposite of a scandal. It was a sacred duty, a political masterstroke, and a financial safeguard, all wrapped into one ritual act. The true rupture, the real forbidden act, was everything else Akhenaten did. His revolution made the sister marriage look conventional by comparison. He declared all the other gods, including Osiris and Isis, to be irrelevant illusions. He tore up the divine script that gave sibling marriage its meaning. So why would he possibly do it? If the old myths were dead to him, what purpose did an old royal tradition serve? This is where the calculation becomes fascinating. Akhenaten needed absolute, unquestioned authority to pull off his religious coup. By marrying a full sister, especially early in his reign, he was sending a thunderous message to the powerful priests of Ammon and the old nobility. He was saying, "My power comes not from your temples, but from my own divine birthright. My legitimacy is so pure, so self-contained, it needs no external validation." It was a wall built of royal blood. Then he introduced Nefertiti. She was not his sister. Her power did not come from an ancient bloodline, but from him and their shared devotion to the Aten. In this new framework, the sister, if she existed, may have represented the old, stable form of legitimacy, while Nefertiti represented the dynamic, revolutionary future. One anchored him to the past he was transforming, the other propelled him toward the radical new world he was building, so the alleged relationship sits at a dizzying crossroads. Was it a hypocritical holdover from the traditions he claimed to despise? Or was it a brutally clever piece of political theater, using the most traditional tool available to protect his utterly untraditional revolution? Perhaps for Akhenaten there was no contradiction. In his mind, he was not just emulating Osiris, he was superseding all the old gods. His family, whether it included a sister or not, was not just a royal line, it was the sole direct channel for the Aten's light on earth. Every relationship within it, every marriage, was a divine mandate that served one ultimate purpose: to isolate and elevate the pharaoh as the one true connection between heaven and a world he was desperate to remake. The sun set on Amarna long ago, its stones reclaimed by the desert and its memory nearly erased by vengeful successors, so what are we left with in the dust? A collection of haunting fragments. We have the ambiguous carvings, the suggestive titles, and the diplomatic letters that hint at a shadow queen. We have the debated identities, from a powerful sister like Sitamun to the tragic possibility of his own daughter Meritaten. And we have the complex, uncomfortable truth that in the pharaoh's world, marrying a sister was less about forbidden love and more about divine duty, a political tool to consolidate a god-king's power. Akhenaten's potential use of this tool, however, was twisted by his radical revolution. He invoked the old sacred tradition only to destroy the very gods that gave it meaning, making his family the sole object of worship. This story captivates us because it weaves together the ultimate human threads, absolute power and intimate relationships, set against the backdrop of history's most dramatic religious upheaval. It forces us to confront a figure who defies easy understanding, so we return to the central or unanswerable question. Was the heart of this mystery a genuine, profound love story between a king and his sister, a bond that defied even their own changing world? Or was it purely a cold, calculated political maneuver, a move on a cosmic chessboard to secure a revolution? Or perhaps, most intriguingly, is it a modern myth we have projected onto the past, our own fascination with taboo and romance coloring the silent stones of Amarna? History rarely gives us neat endings, only better questions. What do you believe lies at the center of this ancient mystery? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know which other historical puzzles you would like to unravel in future videos. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of the past, subscribe and join us as we continue to explore the greatest enigmas history has to offer.